your socks! Hey!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast, now streaming on all major podcast platforms. A Till Valhalla Project ambassador. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a fireside chat with Kevin Brewer, Navy veteran, and he's going to talk about his coaching business. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? The Lost Art website, that's the lostart.podbean.com. Go check it out, see what we're all about. There is a merchandise tab. You can click on that, go get you a hat, a shirt, a cup, something like that. Help support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Also, a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project out there doing amazing things. If you don't know anything about that organization, go to their website. That's tillvalhallaproject.com. And if there's any way you can help them out, please do so.
Ton Tavern, birthplace of the Corps. We as Marines hold this history close to our hearts. Wouldn't it be spectacular if the establishment was born again? The Ton Legacy Foundation, a nonprofit 501c3, is taking the task and is looking to the Marines to once again save the day. Help the Lost Art podcast in raising funds to help get the Ton built once again only 100 yards from the original establishment in Philadelphia. We are looking for Marines to donate $25 representing the upcoming 250th birthday of the Corps. Spread the message and help establish the Ton, a place for Marine brethren to gather and remember our historic beginning. Go to the Lost Art GoFundMe page and donate today. The Ton Legacy Foundation, reestablishing our birthplace.
All right, with that, I got Kevin here. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic. I'm excited
Good.
you're finally on here. It took us a little while to work it out, but we're here, so that's good.
Yeah. The little flu and some laryngitis kind of derailed us a little bit, but yeah, we stuck with it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, Navy veteran, and you had, some health issues going along, and so why don't we kind of, I guess, start there with kind of how you got through your health issues, and then now kind of what you're doing with the business. So wherever you want to start on that, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, so it's going to give you a quick background of why, as we get further into this, why I'm mentally derailed because of my health is that although I had a rough childhood growing up, my dad passed away in April. We, kind of had a pretty decent relationship at that point, but growing up, it was just really rough. Had a lot of bad things going on, and he's an alcoholic and all those kind of things, right? And so I always built resilience through that. But the way I was able to overcome all that and not let that defeat me or take over my mind was I was very athletic, very sporty. I was constantly on the move doing stuff. So I was able to get my frustration out physically all the time,
Right.
which then obviously being in the military, which is, that's what you do.
Yeah.
So I didn't ever have a problem with that because I was able to, extricate all my feelings and anger through sport or something physical.
Right.
When I had my health issues come in, though, it took away my physical capabilities, and I didn't have a backup plan. I
Yeah.
didn't understand how to get frustration, anger, all those things out. I didn't understand that's what I was doing with that stuff. So I had no backup plan and I just lost it. And slowly but surely, as I got weaker and weaker and more issues cropped up, I got more and more mentally weak and just things just spiraled. So that kind of sets it up a little bit. But kind of what started the whole process is when I was in Afghanistan, I got hit in the face with a softball. Being stupid. And it caused a
It
lot of
happens.
problems on this section of left side. About a month later, I ended up getting a sinus infection. It just never really went away. Um,
Mm.
and military doctors, they didn't believe it when there was a sinus infection because again, I was in Afghanistan and the Z-Pack didn't work. So they're like, well, it must not be an infection then because the Z-Pack should kill everything, right?
Yeah.
So for the next probably 6 months, I was just basically snorting, what is it, like the nasal sprays.
Hmm.
I got to the point where I couldn't breathe. I was doing it like 20, 30 times a day. And on
Oh,
the
wow.
flight home, I didn't know that that had like Sudafed and all that stuff was bad for you. Like I was really ignorant to that at that time. On the flight home, my heart rate just skyrocketed. And I
Mm,
effectively gave myself a heart attack on the plane because I'd used the spray so many times. I was literally
right.
doing like every 10 minutes because I couldn't breathe. So obviously I had to throw that away. I think we got back. I also caught probably, I think it was a swine flu at that time, 2008, whatever.
Mm,
I was down and out. It was bad. So I had all these issues coming back. Sick as a dog, had a sinus infection. When they did the x-ray, my entire left side was completely top to bottom, completely full of infection, and the right side was halfway full. So when they showed me
wow.
the x-ray, he was like, "Hey, you see this, all that white here?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "That should be dark." He goes, "You see that like halfway up there? That's white." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "That should be dark." I was like, "Oh, well, that's good."
Wow.
So that kind of started it. And again, I had the swine flu was coming up from that. So that was sick as that. I had that. And I had ended up being two hernias right next to each other on the left side. Uh, so all these things kind of going on. Well, to get the sinus infection under control, they give me like a 21-day antibiotic. They didn't tell me that that antibiotic causes ligament damage. I
Mm,
was playing basketball and lifting weights the whole time afterwards. Again, coming back up from being sick and weak anyway, having this
right.
thing that causes ligament damage. I also have psoriasis I was born with that turned into psoriatic arthritis, which I didn't know also causes potential ligament problems. So I was
Right.
lifting weights and I felt something kind of pop up in my neck. And, being 20, whatever it was, 22, 23, 24, what it was at the time, I'm invincible. And I was like, oh, that kind of hurt. Should probably stop lifting weights. So I'll just go play basketball, right? That's a smart thing to do.
Right.
So I went and played basketball, even though it hurt. That night, I kept waking up. My chest kept like, my heart rate was just like going crazy. I was like, what the hell is going on, man? So eventually I was like, all right, we should probably go to the hospital. Like, it keeps waking me up. So went there and they're like,
Wow.
we don't see nothing's going on. So I think you'd be fine. Well, that never stopped. I just kept doing that, like for the
Hmm.
next 13 plus years. So obviously, I kept going to the hospital, going to doctors. Like, look, this keeps happening. I can't do anything physical. Every time I do anything like physical, like the next 3 to 7 days, like my chest feels like my heart feels like about to pop out of my chest. So having chest pain goes into the back. By the way, it's almost impossible to determine if the pain starts in the chest and goes to the back or starts in the back and goes to the chest, which is important to the story. How do you know, right? Like, because the only thing you've ever been
Yeah.
told is about is heart attack symptoms, is chest pain that goes to the back, goes down the arm, all those different things.
Right.
But there's so many interconnected nerves in here. And if you have any kind of rib issues, you don't understand. Well, I didn't understand. There's all of your nervous system basically comes out of your ribs.
Right. Yeah.
So all these problems kept coming up. I started getting migraines. I was having basically the symptoms of a heart attack and stroke every day. And they just
Wow.
kept telling me it's nothing. It's PTSD. It's anxiety. It's like, it's not PTSD. Well, it happened when you got back from Afghanistan. I was like, well, that's just coincidence. Like, I can talk about everything I did in Afghanistan, except for some things I legally can't. I was like,
Right.
so I didn't have a problem with that, but they didn't believe me.
Mm.
So it just kept getting worse and worse. There was like several times where I ended up getting hospitalized because my heart rate just got stuck. One time I was actually in Bethesda and my heart rate got stuck at like 160. And I was like
Oh,
sitting there just
wow.
waiting for like the dentist, right? And like I was like, man, my heart is just like will not stop. And I'm going down to the emergency room. They ended up like admitting me for the night. While I was sleeping, my heart rate was still at like 120, 130. And they're like, when I woke up, they're like, it's anxiety. You need to go see the psych. I was like, my heart rate was at 130 and I was asleep. I don't think that's anxiety, right? Like,
Yeah.
what the hell am I anxious about? Sleeping? Like, so the Navy just didn't help me. It just kind of got worse and worse. So eventually I ended up getting out, started seeing civilian doctors, VA doctors, all that
Mm,
stuff. And nobody wanted to believe me because I had
mm,
so many disparate symptoms. Like I was getting migraines, I was having back pain, I was having leg pain, all those different
right.
things. So they're like, oh, none of it's connected. So they would never think about it as a whole system. So it just progressively got worse and worse and worse. Eventually, it got to a point where I think it was 2016, I got what's called tethered cord syndrome. So your spine actually terminates about midway through your back, and then the rest of it's just like the nerves going in, spreading out. But your spine is held in place as you're getting formed in vitro, um, with a little piece of skin basically to the bottom of your tailbone, so that when it's getting formed, it doesn't go off in outer space, you know. Well,
Right. Yeah.
that piece of skin normally elongates for people so that your spine can ride up and down in the column throughout your life
Mm.
as you bend over and do all those different things. Well, mine didn't elongate either that, or it just got stiff because of all these other symptoms and issues I had going on.
Right.
So as I bent over, my spine was basically getting yanked, which then obviously causes lots of pain.
Right. Yeah.
So I had about 2 times a day I could get in and out of the car, and that was about the only the amount that extent of I could me being. God, that was the extent of the amount of time I could bend over in a day. And because I was coaching softball at the time, kind of, I could only get out of the car twice. If I needed to get gas, that means I had to plan on non-practice days to get gas. So I had to plan everything out, before the surgery. Finally got the surgery that kind of helped out for a little bit. And then again, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Eventually got to the point where literally head to toe, my skin was crawling. My face was numb most of the time. If I look up for like a couple minutes, I'd be paralyzed from the neck down for about an hour. And the pain was about 12 out of 10. And I was just
Wow.
laying there just crying, just like I'm dying. I had no idea what was going on. And started seeing all these different doctors. I was trying to get like injections, steroid injections and stuff for the spine. That wasn't really
Hmm.
working. Started seeing a rheumatologist. They started on me like a bunch of rheumatologic drugs because they realized I had mixed connective tissue disorder and psoriatic arthritis. So I was on hydroxychloroquine, I was on naproxen, methotrexate,
Oh my
and then
gosh.
they started me on a biologic, which was basically just chemotherapy. That I got a lung infection from. So I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to do this again. And then the 3 times I rescheduled it afterwards, like something else came up. They're like, no, we can't do that. So like at the first one I had to reschedule because of the lung infection, and then 2 other times. And I
Right.
was like, there's a sign here. Like I am not supposed to do this again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. So I was like, I need to find a different route then. So I actually just this led it basically ended up being led to a point where I was having another panic attack. Let me backtrack for a second. At this point, obviously, as you can tell, I was having multiple panic attacks every single day. I was
Right.
in my closet one day getting ready and it hit again. And I was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna die. Like I'm not even gonna call the hospital. Again, I'm not gonna go. I know what they're gonna say. I'm just gonna lay here
Yeah.
and die. It's like, and I'm not a particularly religious person in church, especially like going to church and that. But I was like, God, I don't know how this works anymore, but uh, if you let me survive this, then I'll figure something out and I'll help other people.
Yeah.
So obviously I survived. So I was like, okay, I gotta start figuring out. So I started to kind of like look into like motivational stuff online. Found guys like
Hmm.
Jocko Willing, David Goggins, this guy named Brian Kane, he does a lot of stuff with mental performance with the um, professional athletes.
Right.
So I just started going down that route, mental performance. And I said, look, okay, well, one thing I can control is my weight. I was 240 at this point, overweight. It's like I can control that. So I can control my eating, kind of get that under control, which should help with the medications and stuff. So through just nutritional compliance for myself, like I went through these different methods, I lost roughly 90 pounds
Wow.
overall and got off all my medications because the diet was actually helping me rebuild my body. It took care of all the uh, underlying like metabolic health issues like the
Right.
psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, the GERD, all those things were
Hmm.
taken care of because of this the food. So I was able to drop all the rheumatoid drugs. And then I said, look, I don't know how to read MRIs, but I'm an analyst by trade, right? Like in the
Mm-hmm.
Navy, in the military, I was an analyst, a collector and analyst. And then since in the civilian side, I do analysis with the government. So I was like, I know how to look at two things and see what's different.
Right.
So I just pulled up MRIs. I started going through the MRIs and I started looking at them. And I was like, hey, this looks different. This looks weird. This looks odd. Go online. I'd try to find things that matched it or didn't. And then would go
Right.
on places like Reddit. There's a subreddit called Ask Docs that you can post in there, and like certified doctors and stuff could like reply to you. So I would just post a bunch of stuff in there like, hey, I found this MRI. Can you explain what this is? So I found a bunch of things that way.
Okay.
Um, and because again, I'm an analyst, I would find things that fit potentially diagnoses.
Mm-hmm.
I would try to see if I can find reasons that it was real and find reasons
Mm-hmm.
that it was not. And I went through hundreds of things, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can see this, but not, no, this doesn't make sense. And I would go into different things. The one thing I came across that I was like, the more I looked into it, the more I was like, yeah, I can't find a reason this isn't it. Was this thing called Chiari malformation, which is actually something that I found originally when I had the tethered cord, because that's something that could cause the tethered cord. And
Mm.
what this is basically your cerebellar tonsils come down through the hole in your skull a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not supposed to at all, obviously.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So they would come down. I was like, okay, and that causes all kind of neurologic issues, obviously, because it's right there by your brainstem, which then causes all kinds of disparate nervous system issues and different things with your
Mm-hmm.
muscular system, everything throughout your entire body. And none of it makes sense because the higher up you go, the more nerves that could be affected. Makes
Right.
sense. So I started looking into it and I said, hey, I started looking at MRI, I started measuring. I go, hey, actually, I do have a mild Chiari. So I started going down that route. I got to Johns Hopkins neurosurgery, started talking to the guy there. And he was like, no, I don't think that's what you got. That's not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna cut you open. I was like, okay, well, I pulled up the MRI. I said, well, this is how I decided this. Where did I go wrong? And he just goes, well, you didn't, but I don't think that's what's causing it. And I go, wait, so you're saying that it's there? He's like, yeah. I go, so we can't explore that being a possible issue? No. I was like,
Well,
what
that
the?
doesn't make any sense whatever.
Right. So I was like, well, that's really helpful. So he's like, no, just go back to your neurologist. And I go, well, if you're saying this isn't the problem, there is it's a mechanical issue, right? He's like, yeah. I go, so if it's not this, it's a couple other things within that realm that all mechanical issues. He's like, yeah. I go, so a neurologist only does like internal medicine. So if it's not something you can cover by medicine, then they can't do anything, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, so why the fuck would I go back to a neurologist?
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't know, but go back to your neurologist. I go, well, you're really helpful. Thank you.
Wow.
So now I'm back to kind of square one a little bit, right? Um, I ended up one of the things I went into the subreddit asked docs for was there was this like a soft tissue overgrowth right around C2 where
Mm-hmm.
cervical vertebrae.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a PANS, PANNUS, I think it's called. And it's usually a sign of like rheumatoid arthritis, something like that, which makes sense because I had psoriatic arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I ended up finding in Facebook an article that was talking about a study that was done mostly in children because a lot of stuff's found in children. It was if you had a PANIS and a mild Chiari together, it usually meant there
Mm-hmm.
was cervical instability. I was like, huh, what's this
Mm.
cervical instability? So I looked that up. It's called CCI, cervical, craniocervical instability. So basically, the ligaments that hold the neck onto the skull, or the skull onto the neck, are loose.
Right.
So it
Oh,
moves
okay.
too much, right? Obviously, then it starts crushing your brainstem and all those different things, which causes all kinds of problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
found that correcting the instability got rid of both problems. So I said, I wonder if that's it. So I found this doctor in Colorado, Dr. Chris Centeno, at the Centeno Schultz Clinic that does stem cell injections to treat that problem.
Hmm.
procedure he created himself. There's only like I think three or four doctors in the world that do it, and he trained them
Oh,
all.
wow.
And I think most of them are in his clinic, and he trained like one or two for Europe. Um, and the procedure is pretty simple. You go in that day. They take the stem cells out of your hip, they spin it up, and then they inject it back into different parts of your body that you need. They go in through the mouth first to get at the ligaments there because the only way to get the ligaments is to hold the neck to the skull or through the mouth.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you got to go
Oh,
through the
wow.
brain. Otherwise, you got to go through the brain stem, which is obviously not a good thing.
Yeah, not necessarily the
Not
best way to
ad,
do
not
it.
advised. You usually don't wake from that. So, so I started treatments with that. When I first started, I could barely go from the couch to the fridge. I got my first treatment August 2021, I think it was. Um, and this year I did my fourth treatment, but that was more just to see if we can get more progress. But I did
Hmm.
10 Spartan races this year, five of the 5Ks, three 10Ks, and two 21Ks. So I've made
Wow.
incredible progress. Um,
Yeah. Now, and you said you've only did 4 treatments?
yeah.
That, well, obviously that seems to be the what it was, right? I mean,
Yeah. So within that, we found there was like there was cervical instability. So there's an X-ray you can do. It's called DMX, dynamic motion X-ray. So basically, like they're doing a continuous X-ray while you're doing movement side, side, forward, back, different things, right?
hmm
So they found that I had it there, and then a couple other issues in the cervical spine. Um, and then through his kind of diagnosis and kind of stuff, we found some other things. So one of the things is there's this thing called sedular or CMS, cervical medullary syndrome,
Okay.
where normally when you look down, your second vertebrae will poke backwards and crush your brainstem. But
Hmm.
this doctor has found that there are some people who, when they look up, it does that, which is what was
Oh,
happening
wow.
with me. So we started doing another treatment on that within the treatments, and that's helped out tremendously too. And then this
Hmm.
last couple ones we've done a lot of different areas. So, and while I was talking about the rib cage stuff, so I found now that I have a ton of rib cage dysfunction, which obviously through the military and different things, which is probably what set off the cervical instability issues,
Right.
is because my rib cage was so stiff. So basically,
Mm.
most of my spine through the ribs, the thoracic spine, were so stiff that everything else was taking up movement, motion that wasn't supposed to be taken up.
Right.
So I've been working with a physical therapist every week. He comes to my house. I don't go through insurance at all because they dictate how many visits you get, what they can work on, those
Mm.
different things. If I pay out of pocket, he just comes and we work on whatever we need to work on. Um,
Yeah.
because sometimes it doesn't make sense, but like say you work on your hip and it loosens up your back, right? Like your
Yeah. Oh,
spine.
yeah, yeah.
So we just go through that. Like, hey, I was like, this is what's hurting. It does evaluation. It goes up. Here's what's stopping that. So we'll work on this
Hmm.
today. So we've made a lot of progress through the stem cells and then doing that to kind of get back. But um, get back into the mental performance. Obviously, when I'm going through this, daily panic attacks, anxiety through the roof,
Right.
you know. Uh, but I knew while I was going through this, I was like, okay, well, I started controlling my diet, so I got that under control. Um, Started doing the analysis, go, okay, well, this is what I can do. So when I was getting to the panic, I started going, okay, I started talking to myself more than I listened to myself, saying like, okay, well, if I can kneel down and get it to calm down at all, then I know it's panic, not a heart attack, because that was obviously first and foremost, like your heart rate's going and
Right.
you're like, fuck, I'm dying, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm having a stroke, I'm having a heart attack, right? Like constantly, like so. Uh, I started talking to myself and going, look, okay, well, if I can get this to calm down for a second, like, even just for a second, then I know that it's not that. So
Hmm.
I started doing all these different techniques. Now, when I started to get the treatments, like I said, I couldn't barely walk. So I started saying, okay, well, if these going to work, that means I got to learn how to be physical again, which means I have
Hmm.
to learn how to deal with the pain and overcome that to
Right.
continue to build these steps. So I started saying, okay, well, I can't walk very far, but let's do 200 meters,
Right.
literally 200 meters. It would take me like an hour.
Oh,
My
wow.
wife would go with me. We would just go. We'd take it slow. Go as far. I was like hurting. It'd take me like 2 hours to recover from, if not longer. But I was like, okay, I
Wow.
got to do it. And my whole thing was like, I would just evaluate. Okay, is it the worst pain I've ever had? If the answer is no, I
Hmm.
haven't made it worse, so I can keep going. And that was how I just
Right.
kind of kept going. I'm repeating it to myself. Okay, if it's not the worst pain. So then I started doing push-ups. I said one push-up. I couldn't do more than one. One push-up a day.
Wow.
And then I would hang on. I had a little pull-up bar. I hung for like 10 seconds. Because I couldn't
Hmm.
do a pull-up. I was just hanging. I was like, look, and again, same evaluation. It hurt, it sucked. It took a while to overcome and recover from that. But I was like, if it's not the worst pain I've ever had, I'm not making
Right.
it worse. So therefore, I have to reset the system and tell my system how to behave again. So I
Hmm.
just learned basically how to reset my nervous system to accept movement. Because at this point,
Right.
obviously, like your subconscious brain is is set there fully for survival. So
Hmm.
if you're doing something that thinks your subconscious thinks will kill you, it'll stop you from doing it. So
Yeah.
I had to override that by talking to myself, literally saying like, you're not dying. I've had worse pain doing these things. It's felt worse before. That means it's getting better. And I would just have to repeat that to myself over and
Right.
over
Yeah.
again. Um,
And you're like actually saying it out loud to yourself. Yeah.
yeah. I'll talk, literally talking to myself. Um, and it feels weird. It feels like very
Yeah.
odd, but you have to
But
because
it
you're,
works, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
because you have to break that train of thought
Hmm.
and then literally because your nervous system is broken up, right? So it's like
Right.
you have the subconscious part that's just autopilot,
Hmm.
habitual. It just wants to save your life. So again, if it believes you're in danger, it'll just stop you. It'll prevent you from going forward.
Hmm.
Uh, so you have to override that. You have to reset
Right.
it. Uh, and it's a slow process because depending on how far down you are and how long you've allowed it to do that, you have
Hmm.
to get out of there. Are you familiar with the survival state versus executive state for your nervous system?
A little bit,
Yeah, so like
not a whole lot. Go ahead and explain it.
uh, fight, flight, or freeze kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're in fight, flight, or freeze, you're in survival state. So basically, there's no
Hmm.
thought. You can't think. Your body is just trying to live, right?
Right.
And
It's
in
just
any
reacting.
right. So by naming those things, by physically talking, by physically telling myself these things, I pull myself
Hmm.
out of survival state and into executive state. So I can start thinking now. I get out of that survival state from the subconscious and into the
Hmm.
conscious level to go, okay, hey, I can think now. So let me actually evaluate. Am I
Right.
dying? No, I'm not. Okay, so I can overcome this. I can keep going. Okay. So you have to put, that's why it helps, is because you get out of that
Yeah.
survival state into the actual thought process state where you can go, okay, I can actually think here and make a decision rather than just react. I can respond.
Right.
So that's kind of
Wow.
the reasoning behind why that works.
Yeah. Man, that's incredible. So much that you had to go through to get to that point, you
Yeah.
know? It's amazing. And to be able to continue to tell yourself, hey, it's getting better. I'm still working. I'm still doing
Yeah.
to a point that now you're out there doing the Ironman stuff is incredible.
Yeah. Spartan races, but yeah.
Spartan races. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. I mean,
And
it's incredible.
yeah. Yeah, I'm telling you, when I first started, I think I'd had one or two treatments. And I was in Los Angeles for a conference a couple years ago. Before my, oh yeah, it was two. So it was right before my third treatment. And I was going to do a Spartan race there with the group. And that was going to be my first one. And this is before I really understood even some of this stuff. And I had
Hmm.
actually one of the weird symptoms I had was that my left hip would get like really, really painful. So I
Hmm.
couldn't really sit. And then that would, for whatever reason, when my left hip would get painful, my heart rate would shoot up. It was very odd. And I would put like ice on my hip and everything, calm the hip down, and the heart rate would drop. Like, look, I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense,
Wow.
but it works. I think I understand why now, but um, but at the time I didn't understand it. Well, I was kind of having some heart palpitations at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I had, went in and saw the doctors and everything. They said everything was fine. But I saw a note come in that night, the night before,
Mm-hmm.
on my chart, and it said it was whatever they called it, whatever it was, and then said, and I was like, looked up, and I was like, it could kill you right now. I was like, motherfucker. So like, of course, then like anxiety shot up. I was like immediately going, oh,
Right.
I'm dying. So then that pain kicked in. And my heart rate, I couldn't get it under control. I was trying everything. I popped like a Vicodin. I was using a TENS machine. I was using heat, had heat packs on there. I was trying everything to try to make that race. And I was like, I got to the race and I was like, I can't, man. There's no way I'm gonna make this. I was
Yeah.
like, I can barely walk right now. I was like, standing just it sucks. I was like, I just don't think I can do it. So I didn't end up getting able to do it. But at that point, I was like, no, there's no fucking way this is gonna stop me. Like, I'm gonna do one of these races.
Right.
So that was in December of 22.
Okay.
February 23 was my third procedure, and I started training. I was really only doing like 6 push-ups a day, and then like 10, I think I was up to like 10 pull-ups. And I was doing, have you heard of the five Tibetan rites by chance?
No, I'm not.
It's like five yoga moves in sequence that you do.
Oh, okay.
So I was just doing those every day and doing the physical therapy to kind of work my not really strength, it was more just movement.
Mm-hmm.
So really only strength stuff I was doing was push-ups and some pull-ups
Right.
and then some like crunches or something, right? And I just kept building, building, building. And last September, I did the Spartan, the 5K in DC.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed up. I was like, look, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. I don't know if finish. I was like, but all I know is this time I'm gonna get to the starting line. And I'm gonna start the race.
Right.
And I had a friend from work actually end up going to with me, and he's in much better shape than I was at the time. He could have crushed it, but he stayed back with me. He just kind of was like, no, I'm just gonna enjoy it with you, help you out. And I was able to do all but one obstacle by myself. So I was like super happy I
Wow.
made it. It took me an hour and a half to do the 3 miles, or roughly 3 miles, a
Mm-hmm.
little over 3 miles, the 5K. Uh, this year I went and did the same race, and I did both the 10K and the 5K that on the weekend. I did the 10K. So it took me 90 minutes to do the 5K last year. I did
Right.
97 for the 10K this year, and I completed every
Oh, wow.
obstacle. Yeah, which is more obstacles too.
Yeah, that's
That's how
incredible.
far. Yeah,
And when that's within 1 year,
yeah.
man.
Eh,
Well, the treatment seems to be working,
yeah,
between the treatment and then, kind of what you're doing, with your personal stuff, like as far as dieting and
yeah,
yoga and all that type of stuff seems to be helping quite a bit.
yeah. So again, I work with my physical therapist every week, and he's actually made the comment. He's like, I've literally never seen anybody make as much progress as you have ever.
Hmm.
And I attribute that 100%, one, to diet, but two, obviously the treatments help, but within the treatments, the mental performance is the game changer, right? Because at the end
Right.
of the day, if I didn't believe that I was getting better, there's no chance I'm going to get better, right? Like, because I
Yeah.
can tell you right now, your foot hurts. And if I tell you that enough times and you start to actually believe it, like, it doesn't matter if there's a problem with your foot right now, your foot would start hurting in about an hour, right? Or less,
Hmm.
because your
Yeah.
brain is so powerful, right? Like, people just don't understand that, but nobody trains it, right? Like, say you want to start working out.
Hmm.
It starts with a thought. In the middle of the workout, you're thinking, and after you're done, you think and evaluate. So there's constantly working your brain, but
Right.
I shouldn't say nobody, most people have no attention to train it. So it's like,
Hmm.
well, your brain's running at all times, but you put no effort into actually learning how to manipulate it and control it. It
Right.
doesn't make sense, right? So I just started doing that. I was like, look, I don't know what I'm capable of, but I do know that I can control that thought. And
Hmm.
every single time I think start to deviate, going like, ah, this sucks. This isn't getting better. I stop it in its tracks and go, no, we look at the progress we've made. Stop being
Hmm.
whiny. You're doing great. Just keep going. Like of course it's gonna
Yeah.
hurt a little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
here and there. Of course things are gonna crop up. Uh, Another thing that I did within there is a lot of people don't do, and this is kind of what helps, is stop identifying with the problem. So if you notice, I didn't say
Mm.
I try not to use the language of I have this or I am this, whatever. Like,
Right.
because a lot of people say, like, for cancer, for instance, right? Like, I have
Hmm.
cancer, or I'm a cancer survivor. Well, no, a cancer coexisted within your body with you. You and your body are different, right? Like,
Hmm.
you as a subconscious person is different from your body. You guys you're just in the body. It's
Yeah.
just a vessel, right?
Hmm.
So even if there's something there, I just tell myself I coexist with this problem. It doesn't define me though. So I'm going to
Right.
overcome it. I'm going to push it out and I'm going to borrow the body more full time. Right? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you don't get to stay here. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to push you out. So I don't
Mm.
define myself by those problems. You detach away from them. So like as you come up with these symptoms, one of the things I did during it was actually stop naming the symptoms, right? So you actually just don't even give it a name. You call it it. You say it's, right? It's like,
Uh,
the it's are coming back, right? So you actually give it, you don't even give it a name so that it
hmm.
doesn't even have any power over you because you're not even going to call it what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When you're in the beginning stages, right, that's really important. As you get more farther along, like you can really separate and go, okay, hey, yeah, that kind of cropped up. Like I'm coexisting with this problem. My heart rate jumped up a little bit. That's doing its own thing right now. I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and it's gonna fall
Hmm.
back in line, right? So
Right.
like as my nervous system, all these different things like start to try to act up a little bit, I go, hey, what are you doing, man? And I'll just like I'll talk to him, be like, no, you need to go away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like literally just like, no, that's not, we're not gonna do that anymore. We're gonna go do this over here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and like my body starts going like, oh shit, okay. Like I know it sounds dumb, but it works. Like it
No,
starts
there's
to
something to
calm
be said
down.
about that, though.
Yeah,
There's something to be said, and being able to tell yourself like, "Oh, I can overcome this. I can do this. I can do that." It's huge. Just to be able to convince yourself to do things,
yeah,
convince your body, I guess, to do things. And what you're doing is 100% spot on, I think.
yeah. And like I said, the I don't want to like overlook the nutrition part because I do notice a big difference
Hmm.
when I eat poorly. Um, Now again, I had a lot of other health issues. There were chronic health issues. So the psoriasis turned into
Hmm.
psoriatic arthritis, different things, right? So when I eat poorly, my joints would hurt more, which would then
Mm.
perpetuate more of the problems, right? So
Right.
like then it would be like, okay, well, this is hurting now. And then I would start to like really again identify with it and then go, well, what else is hurting? And then just kind of harp on that, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, okay. So I mean there is ways now when I look at it and go, okay, well, yeah, I ate something. Of course the joint's gonna act up a little bit, but you know what, we're gonna again push it out a little bit. And then we're gonna clean up the diet again, right? So it's a
Yeah.
little easier for me because I had all those health issues to do it. Um,
Right.
but there's a lot of things I've figured out since that actually makes eating right uh, really easy and actually the default for me and actually have a hard time not eating properly now.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, when you say you change your diet, what are you doing with your diet?
so that's actually the really funny part is nutrition is so nuanced, right? Like
Hmm.
what worked for me will not work for you.
Right.
Specifically, right? Like generalities to a certain extent, you just got to play with it. So what I first started doing was, I was 240 pounds,
Hmm.
plus over 240 plus, not athletic, right? I was overweight. I was almost in a size 50 pant. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I was a
Yeah.
big boy. Um, so the first thing I did, I said, well, I need to get my sugar intake under control. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I was at the office I was working in, there was candy everywhere, cookies everywhere, donuts constantly, right? It's
Hmm.
like, so I started telling myself, I was like, look, one time a day, I'm gonna walk by and I'm gonna say no. Because you normally just walk by and grab it every single time, right? So I was like, one time
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
just one time a day, I'm gonna say no. After that, if I feel like it, I'm gonna do it. Whatever. I'm not gonna try to stop myself. Just gonna stop myself one time.
Hmm.
And that became easy. Then it became two times, right? And then just keep adding.
Right.
And the easier it
Yeah.
became, it's
Yeah.
like a whole day, then it's a week, and then it's like, okay. So then I started getting to the point where I was like, all right, when donuts come in, if there wasn't the old-fashioned cake donut,
Hmm.
I'm not going to take one. If that's there, I will take it. If it's not, I will not have a donut.
Right.
Well, a lot of people like the old-fashioned cake donut for whatever reason, so it was hardly
Yeah.
ever there. So I was like, okay, why not? Right? But it was like a hard, fast thing. I was like, no, I'm not going to say no if that's there. But it was a very specific thing, right? So I
Yeah.
started kind of playing these tricks with myself at first because I needed those tricks because I didn't understand
Hmm.
some of the stuff going on. But once I lost about 30 pounds that way, I started, well, between that and I started doing this thing. I don't know if you ever heard of in Okinawa, they do it a lot, is where they talk about when they're about 80% full or whatever, they stop eating. Really, it's what it comes down to is if you're paying attention while you're eating, at some point you stop being hungry,
Hmm.
and if you keep eating, you'll get full, right?
Right.
So if you stop
Makes sense.
when you stop when you're no longer hungry, you're actually full. But most people don't
Mm.
understand that because it takes a while for it to like kind of tell you, right? So I
Yeah.
started paying attention there and just stopped when I was no longer hungry. So between the changes in the sugar intake and then the um, volume for me, I lost
Right.
30 pounds. And then I started
Wow.
doing intermittent fasting, which wasn't really hard for me because again, I had GERD at the time. I was dealing with GERD.
Hmm.
So I was already doing about 10 hours anyway. So I just kind of
Hmm.
pushed breakfast a little bit and it wasn't that complicated. And
Right.
really, as you get into it, it actually just becomes easy. Um, so that helped get down another probably 20, 30 pounds. And then I found Stephen Gundry program called Plant Paradox, um, which is a lot of plants, a little bit of meat, which was not my best, favorite thing because
Hmm.
I like
Yeah.
meat. I did that for a little bit and that worked. That got me down a little bit more. Again, a lot of these are just kind of like getting you down, eating healthier, higher quality
Right.
foods, which
Hmm.
was the bigger issue, is because eating higher quality food, you actually feel full longer,
Hmm.
and while eating less and not even trying to.
Right.
Um, so then I ended up finding the carnivore diet. So I went to that for a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, wasn't bad. I lost a ton of weight on that actually. Got down to like 153.
Wow.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
but I just it's hard that's a really hard one to sustain. Um, so now I do a little bit of a mix. I don't, one, people say you need a lot of variety. You don't. Like if you actually look throughout history, like we wouldn't have had a lot of variety as hunter-gatherers, right? Like you would have had what the
Right.
hell's in
Yeah.
the region. That's it, right?
Hmm.
Historically too, people would have gotten fat during the summer, and then lost weight during the winter because of storages and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's what bears do that now. If you see them, they get really big during the
Hmm.
summer, hibernate all winter, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it kind of pushes you into the carnivore diet in the winter, historically speaking,
Hmm.
because there's only animals, right? Like it's really very little
Right.
plants.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I started paying attention to that stuff and go like, well, I don't really need variety. I just need to find the quality foods I need that make me feel the
Hmm.
best and just eat that. So I
Right.
just have a pretty standard. I just eat a lot of meat,
Hmm.
supplement with protein, pure protein. I just make my own shakes because I don't like all the added stuff. I don't like artificial sweeteners at
Hmm.
all. Um, I do a lot of fruit, some salad. Every now and then I do like sweet potatoes, and then milk, and
Hmm.
and honey, and pure honey, and pure maple syrup. Just maple syrup.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I eat. Uh,
No kidding.
and
Wow.
I eat a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm working out so much. I do so much now physically because I can.
Hmm.
I'm eating like 32 to 3,500 calories a day. I do
Right.
like almost 300 grams of carbs, over
Hmm.
300 grams of protein, about 100 grams of fat. I have found for me that if I have more carbs than protein, my joints tend to hurt more.
Hmm.
If I have too high a percentage of dietary fat, I start having stomach issues, um, as in like urgency issues, right?
Right.
So I've just noticed the percentages. If I keep them in balance and then eat quality foods within that, it doesn't really matter what it is. I
Hmm.
stay very like energetic and fit and fine.
Right.
Um, a lot of people do the no fat, but the problem with no fat is that a dietary fat is what regulates your hormones. So when you
Hmm.
do no fat, your hormones get dysregulated which then causes all kinds of other problems.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
supplement with medications and all these other
Mm,
things to fix the problem of not having the ability to break down. Another thing is like a lot of people eat salad, right? And they'll get like
hmm
a fat-free dressing. Most of the nutrients in a salad are fat soluble, meaning if you don't eat them with fat, the dietary fat, your
hmm
body can't digest it. So
Right.
you're
Yeah.
just making waste. You're not getting the
hmm
nutrients from a salad if you don't eat it with a healthy fat or a dietary
Right.
fat. So by going fat free on so many things, you're actually making yourself nutrient deficient,
Mm, that's interesting.
which then ends up getting you into, well, now I need to medicate. I need to take all the supplements and medications and all this
Hmm
other stuff, which then cause all kinds of other problems.
Right.
Um, Another thing a lot of people don't know, which is again goes into the nutrition, is I think it's like 80% of your serotonin. So like the chemicals basically your body creates to that
Right.
create anxiety and all that stuff is actually made in your stomach. You have a lot of neurons in your stomach and it creates that chemical. So
Hmm.
when you have an unhealthy gut, you have an unhealthy brain. So you have a hard time staying and controlling your thoughts and emotions because your
Right.
stomach can't stop producing the bad chemicals, right? So it can't regulate it properly. So when you
hmm
get your stomach fixed and getting it nutrient, all this healthy and quality nutrients,
hmm
magically your brain starts to clear up and you have clearer thoughts. You're able to control that anxiety a little bit better,
hmm
all these different things. And everybody's like, well, that's not true. And then they do it and they're like, I'm not as anxious anymore. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, shoot, man, you learned a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
through obviously through trial and error, right?
Yeah.
As you're going through it. But you obviously are putting it to good use because you're able to take now and help others throughout it. So what are you doing now in that sense, like when you're helping others?
So I help them with resilience first off, because most people like
Mhm.
they have a problem starting and then stop, right? So like they'll do something for like 2 weeks and the guy just can't keep up with it.
Right.
Um, and a lot of this is because they don't have a deep understanding of why. They can't control their thoughts. They have all these other things going on. So we
hmm
start with just that, just the awareness of like, hey, when do you start sliding? Like, right, like when does your actually thought process start to break down? What does that
hmm
look like with your body, with your self-talk, all these different things, like your actual physical body language, your self-talk, like what you're
Right.
focused on, right? Um, and I go through like a traffic light system, right? So green is like you're in control, right? Like your body feeling good, your shoulders are back,
hmm
you're feeling strong, your thoughts are solid, like you're telling yourself all these positive things. Your focus is on whatever you're doing, right? As you get
Right.
into yellow, right, things start to break down a little bit. Your shoulders start slumping a little bit, right? You start going like
hmm
you start doubting yourself.
Right.
Start like kind of paying attention to the crowd, so to speak, right? And when
hmm
you're out of control and you're red, all of a sudden, like your head's down, you're slumped over, right? Like
Right.
the only thing you're focusing on is all the negative. Like you're just telling
hmm
yourself, I suck, I'm a loser, right? So when did those steps start happening? If you can be aware of when they happen, you can actually stop them and then
hmm
reverse it, right? So that's like a big part of it.
Okay.
Um, and then, are you aware of the habit loop?
Mm, I don't know. Go ahead and talk about that because I may
Yeah.
be, but I'm not 100% on that.
So everything really comes habitual, right? So you have the
Yeah.
like the stimulus, a trigger, whatever, something that kind of prompts you to start the habit. Um,
Right.
and most people are aware of like the response, right? So how you
hmm
react or respond, and then the reward, which could be good or bad, right? Like it's not,
hmm
it's just the outcome, really. But most people aren't aware there's actually a second step that's missed in that most of the time, and that's I always forget, like when I go to talk about it, I always forget the name of it. The desire that shit. It'll come to me. Anyway, basically
Yeah. Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
what you're wanting, right? Like there's an
hmm
actual like a need there. Um, So what I found is, and let me give you a side story of like of when I actually really noticed, figured it out. Um, so in May, I went back for my nephew's graduation, and I don't,
Hmm.
again, I don't really eat sweets anymore. Just no, don't really
Hmm.
crave them. But they brought out a bunch of cupcakes, and I was there by myself because my wife had other stuff going on. She couldn't go. She had a bunch of stuff going on with work, and she used to make a lot of cupcakes, and these
Hmm.
cupcakes looked a lot like hers. And I was like, man, I just was like really craving them. But everybody at the party was like, yeah, they look good, but they don't taste very good. Like really, they're dry. They don't have a good flavor, whatever.
Yeah.
But I still was like craving them. I was like, what in the hell is going on? So I was like, man, I'm gonna go get some fruit. Maybe I'm just hungry, whatever. I started eating some stuff. I was like, it's helping a little bit. So I started texting my wife, and I was like, hey, I was like, man, this is kind of weird. I'm just like really craving these cupcakes. It's like they look like something you would make. And as I was like texting her, the craving started going away, right? Because
Huh.
oh, that's the word. I was like, there's a craving, right?
Yeah.
So the second step is craving. So you crave something, right? And it's typically an
Hmm.
emotion or a feeling.
Mm.
What I was actually craving, I thought it was the cupcakes, but it was intimacy with my wife. So having a conversation with her because that
Wow.
reminded me of her, that's what solved that problem. I didn't need the cupcake, I needed the feeling of intimacy with my wife. So having a text conversation with her solved the craving. So I
Wow.
didn't need that.
Yeah.
So that's really like it really kicked in for me to go, oh. So I
That's
help
pretty
people
powerful.
understand that. It's like, okay, well, there's something you're there. You're either running towards or running from.
Right.
Another thing I noticed too is a lot of the arguments and fights that we get into,
Hmm.
even though they seem like they're different topics, they had the same similar theme, was that I wanted them, my family, to take their health as serious as I took their health. And when
Right.
they didn't, it would cause problems. Now, it looked like it was different issues, but it was really the core of me craving them taking it more serious.
Right.
So again, just kind of understanding that there's something there that you're seeking. There's that
Hmm.
problem in there, that craving, that when you can identify that and solve for that, the bad thing you're trying to avoid can go
Hmm.
away, right?
Wow.
You can substitute that really for anything, right? Like I actually truly
Hmm.
believe there's nothing you can be truly addicted to. You just don't understand why, what it's serving, right? And I heard this
Hmm.
from have you ever heard of the Navy SEAL Mark Divine by chance?
I've heard. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got this program, Unbeatable Minds, and I did his program, coaching program. And one of the coaches in there, she's a psychologist. She actually kind of heard it from her first, and then now I'm like really taking into it. Is that is the addiction or what we consider an addiction, it's serving a purpose. And if you
Hmm.
can figure out what that purpose is, and this is kind of, I kind of gone into this whole craving thing is the same thing, right? So if you smoking, right? Like even though it's like quote
Hmm.
unquote negative habit, it's serving some positive purpose for you. And if you
Right.
can understand what that positive purpose is, you can identify something else to fill that gap. And then the
Right.
smoking, you don't even have to try to quit. It's no longer a need because you
Hmm.
solved the problem.
Right.
So a lot of people don't consider that as a thing. They're like, I need to figure out how to quit. Well, what is it giving you? Like, I know it's considered a bad habit, but it's solving a problem for you, even
Hmm.
if it's short term, right? Like food, for instance, right? Like people get quote unquote addicted to food. It's
Right.
solving a problem for you short term. That's why you have to do it so much, right? Because then you'll get overweight and all those
Hmm.
different things because it solved a problem for you. Um, whether that's boredom or something else, right? Like people are afraid to be
Right.
bored. So they open the fridge and they start eating because they're like, well, I don't know. Well, it solved the problem of being uncomfortable being bored, right?
Hmm.
So
Right.
yeah, so there's a lot
Wow.
that you just start to like pick that apart and go,
Hmm.
okay, well, how do I solve that problem? Okay, well, here's a strategy.
Yeah. 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 Man, that's really cool. Very
Yeah.
powerful in what you're saying there, though, and it makes sense. And you're right. Every bad habit that, maybe not every, but the bad
Yeah.
habits that we have is there for something. There's a
Yeah.
reason, you know.
Yeah. Like I said, you're either running to or running from a
Hmm.
feeling.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Wow. Now, how often, now you said you're doing coaching, so how often are you coaching people? Like, are you doing that full time? How does that work?
Not currently, no, not in full time, but
Okay.
eventually, that is the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I kind of do it on the nights and weekends and stuff right now. I do a lot at
Hmm.
work, just kind of like with people as I talk to them, I just help out a lot. And a couple guys I do do it all online. So, um,
Yeah, yeah.
and then some of the people I've coached in the past, like, uh, they don't need as much, but every now and then they'll call me back, just like get a
Yeah,
quick
yeah.
session on, like, so yeah,
Now,
it, it,
did you go to formal training to be a like a coach or anything, or is that just something that you kind of picked up?
uh, a little bit of both. So I
Okay.
think I've always kind of done it, and again, because I talked about my history where I had to
Hmm.
overcome a lot of different things with the family stuff. Um, but I was always in like they had like a peer counseling group, and when I was in high school that I was a part of.
Hmm.
So like people ever had a problem or they felt like they needed to just talk to somebody, I was somebody they'd come
Yeah.
grab and just talk. So I kind of started there. Of course, through the Navy, go through leadership programs like, like
Right.
your or military in general running as a Navy, but all of them have it. Like a lot of it really teaches you how to coach, right?
Hmm.
Like I just
Yeah,
didn't know
absolutely.
I didn't know what it was. Um, but as I started going through this whole mental performance stuff myself, and I noticed I'm like they were just coaching and teaching. I was like, okay.
Hmm.
So I did join Brian Kane's program, and I did this like heroic program. Then again, Mark Devine's Unbeatable
Hmm.
Minds. Just kind of learn different methods and techniques, and then it's kind of like meld it for my own, and I just keep learning more too about like the mind and like kind of
Yeah,
how to overcome these things. So yeah.
man. That's one an incredible story. To be able to overcome all the stuff that you've overcome is just
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean, everybody should hear this story. I mean, honestly, it's amazing to me. But is there anything else that you want to kind of talk about as far as all of this goes, or
Um, no, not specifically. But if
okay?
there's any more questions you had,
Well, not really. I mean, I think that
we
you hit
covered
a
a
lot
lot.
of
So
stuff. Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head on just about everything, and it always, as you're saying things, that my mind is going, and I'm like,
yeah,
well, yeah, maybe I should think about that, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that, as you're saying it, which is really cool.
yeah,
But
yeah. It's funny. I don't know if this is how you are, but I'm a processor, right? So like when I
hmm
hear a bunch of information like this, like I don't always have really good questions on the spot. But
yeah,
like 2 hours later, a day later, I'm like, shit, I really want to know this now, right? Because like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
something will just like sink in and go, man, oh man, like that really hits right now. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, hey, if that is the case, right? I mean, I obviously know how to get in contact with you, but
yeah.
uh, if any of the listeners out there, that maybe a couple of days later they want to reach out to you or something, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I really hit me up on Instagram, Coach Kevin
Instagram.
Brewer. Yeah, just DM me
Okay.
there. That's the quickest and easiest way to get a hold of me.
All
Easiest to
right.
remember. It's Coach Kevin Brewer, KevinBrewer.
Easy
Um,
money.
yeah, that's pretty simple. So
Very cool. Well, hey, man, thanks for coming on and talking about this. Obviously, an inspiration to me, and I'm sure many, many other people. You're doing great things. So thanks for coming on and sharing this. And then we are going to do a My Veteran Story in the near future. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So hearing all about your time in the military and what you all did. So as analysts too, which is pretty cool.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a pretty fun story too. There's a lot of weird things happen there. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very,
uh,
very true. Yeah, I'm
I,
I'm excited to hear that.
I think most military stories have those kind of moments, you know.
Yeah,
So
that's true. That's
yeah,
true. Very nice. Well, hey, one last time, thanks for coming on. I truly, truly appreciate it. Don't go anywhere, but I'm going to close the podcast out real quick. To all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, you need help, anything like that, don't forget that the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net, click on the chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. I know Kevin cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies that you served with, ask them how they're doing. If they need that helping hand, please give them that helping hand. All right, Kevin, thank you. I appreciate you. To all the listeners, stay motivated, change your socks.